Picture this. It's 1950s Hollywood. A grieving widow falls for her best friend's husband at a funeral. A beloved actress gets pregnant by a married director and becomes public enemy number one. These aren't movie plots. They're the real scandals that shook Golden Age Hollywood to its core. Old Hollywood was absolutely riddled with affairs. Seemed like every other star was tangled up in someone else's marriage. But some scandals, they went way beyond breaking up marriages. They demolished entire careers. These weren't your garden variety secret flings. These were atomic bombs that rocked the whole film industry. So let's pull back the curtain on the most jaw-dropping affairs that left nothing but wreckage in their wake. Elizabeth Taylor and Eddie Fischer. The year is 1958, and Elizabeth Taylor is drowning in grief. Her husband, Mike Todd, just passed away in a plane crash on March 22nd. Taylor, who'd already been through the ringer, moving from London to LA when she was just 7, knew how to handle tough times. But this was different. Enter family friend Eddie Fischer, the smooth singing heartthrob, who just happened to be married to America's sweetheart, Debbie Reynolds. What started as a shoulder to cry on quickly turned into something that would blow up 3 careers. This wasn't some hush-hush studio lot affair. This drama played out on every magazine rack in America. Here's the kicker. Taylor and Reynolds, they were best friends. Had been bridesmaids at each other's weddings. Can you imagine? The betrayal sent the public into an absolute frenzy. MGM went into full damage control mode. Taylor's pristine image, tarnished overnight. Fischer's career, it nosedived faster than you can say scandal. His personal demons, struggles with drugs and gambling, came tumbling out for everyone to see. Meanwhile, Reynolds became Hollywood's most sympathetic figure. When Fischer and Taylor finally tied the knot in 1959, people actually booed them in public. Booed! Sponsors yanked Fischer's TV show like it was radioactive. This whole mess became the blueprint for how celebrity scandals could absolutely nuke careers, not just dent reputations. Here's the real kicker, though. Taylor didn't even stick with Fischer. By 1961, she was filming Cleopatra and falling for Richard Burton. Poor Fischer got the boot, both personally and professionally. His popularity never bounced back. By the 70s, he was more of a Hollywood punchline than a pop sensation. Taylor battled depression and substance abuse her whole life, using therapy and medication to cope, often channeling that pain into those legendary performances we all remember. Reynolds later joked, "We just traded husbands." But let's be real. Taylor's mess with Fischer didn't just break up a marriage. It proved that even the most gorgeous woman in the world could become public enemy number one overnight. Ingrid Bergman and Roberto Rossellini. Now, Ingrid Bergman wasn't just any star. She was Hollywood royalty. The Swedish beauty who'd stolen hearts in Casablanca and Gaslight had an Oscar on her shelf, and America eating out of her hand. She was classy, brilliant, and, this was crucial for 1940s Hollywood, squeaky clean. Well, that image got blown to smithereens in 1949. It all started innocently enough. Bergman wrote Italian director Roberto Rossellini, saying she wanted to work with him. Small problem, she had a husband and daughter. He had a wife and kids of his own. But what began as artistic admiration turned into one of the most scandalous affairs in entertainment history. During the filming of Stromboli, Bergman and Rossellini fell hard for each other. When word got out that she was expecting his baby, the public went absolutely ballistic. She gave birth to their son Renato in February 1950, still married to her husband, Dr. Peter Lindstrom. The backlash was swift and merciless. Get this, a U.S. senator actually stood up on the Senate floor and called her a powerful influence for evil. Hollywood basically slammed the door in her face. Church groups organized boycotts of her films. Life magazine ran this wild headline saying she'd sinned in Italy, been forgiven in France, and made a saint in Sweden. Talk about a fall from grace. Bergman went from America's sweetheart to persona non grata faster than you could blink. The exile hit her hard mentally. She struggled with depression throughout her career, and this public shaming made everything worse. She needed therapy and medication just to get through it. She packed up, moved to Italy, and married Rossellini. though their relationship was rocky and ended in divorce by 1957. Here's the ironic part. Getting kicked out of Hollywood actually helped her career. She started working in European cinema and kept winning awards, including another Oscar for Anastasia in 1956, when America finally let her back in. Despite everything, Bergman kept that incredible work ethic, rarely missing a day on set. She used acting as therapy, channeling all that pain into powerhouse performances. She wasn't Hollywood's innocent darling anymore. She was the woman who defied the whole system. Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn. Talk about Hollywood's worst-kept secret. Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn's relationship kicked off in 1941 on the set of Woman of the Year. Tracy, who fought alcoholism and depression his whole life, found something special in Hepburn's fierce independence. Problem was, Tracy was married to Louise Treadwell, but being a devout Catholic, divorce was off the table. So began a 26-year love affair that everyone knew about, but nobody talked about publicly. Hepburn brought her own emotional baggage to the relationship. When she was just 14, her beloved older brother Tom took his own life. Finding him was devastating. It forced her to grow up fast and build these massive emotional walls. She once said, "I wanted to be independent, to separate myself from all the others, and never again to care so much about another person. So I would never feel the pain I felt when my teenage brother passed away." Yet somehow, Tracy broke through those walls. Their partnership went way beyond romance. They made 9 films together. Hepburn basically put Tracy first in everything, especially when his health tanked from all the drinking. Get this, she took a 5-year break from acting just to take care of him. 5 years. Tracy passed away in 1967, right after they wrapped their last film together, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. Out of respect for his family, Hepburn didn't even go to the funeral. Later, she opened up about their relationship, and you could still hear the love in every word. Their story? It's Hollywood's most bittersweet romance, proof that sometimes love means sacrifice. Clark Gable and Loretta Young. Before his heartbreaking love story with Carole Lombard, Clark Gable had another scandal that Hollywood kept under wraps for decades. In 1935, Gable, the undisputed king of Hollywood, was filming The Call of the Wild with Loretta Young. Behind that confident swagger was a guy with serious emotional baggage from a rough childhood that left him both tight with money and emotionally distant. Young was this fresh-faced, deeply religious actress with a spotless reputation. The chemistry between them, off the charts. Problem was, Gable was married. When Young discovered she was expecting, she faced an impossible situation. In those days, having a baby out of wedlock could end your career permanently. As a devout Catholic, Young was torn apart by guilt and shame. So she pulled off one of Hollywood's greatest disappearing acts. She vanished completely, claiming she was sick, and secretly gave birth to a daughter named Judy Lewis in November 1935. Then, get this, she publicly adopted her own baby a year later, telling everyone she'd found the child in an orphanage. The rumors swirled for years, but Young never cracked. Judy Lewis grew up with no clue about her real parents, even though she looked exactly like Gable, right down to those famous ears, which Young actually had surgically altered. It wasn't until Judy wrote her memoir in 1994 that the truth finally came out. Young carried this secret burden for decades, and the guilt ate away at her mental health her entire life. She never publicly admitted the truth, taking it to her grave. This whole elaborate cover-up shows just how far Golden Age stars would go to protect their carefully crafted images. Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall. When Humphrey Bogart met 19-year-old Lauren Bacall on the set of To Have and Have Not in 1944, he was already a huge star at 44. Bogart had his own troubled past to deal with, while Bacall, born Betty Joan Persky, had clawed her way up from poverty in the Bronx after her parents divorced when she was 5. Bogart was stuck in a miserable marriage to actress Mayo Methot. Their fights were so legendary, people called them the Battling Bogarts. But the spark between Bogart and Bacall? You couldn't fake that chemistry. Their off-screen romance became Hollywood's worst-kept secret. Bogart's toxic marriage finally imploded in a nasty divorce in 1945. But here's where their story differs from the others. The public actually loved them together. Instead of scandal and outrage, Bogart and Bacall became Hollywood's ultimate power couple. Their marriage right after his divorce was celebrated like a fairy tale. They made several films together, including The Big Sleep, cementing their place in movie history. They had it all: fame, love, respect. But there was collateral damage. Method's life spiraled after the divorce. She fell deeper into alcoholism and basically disappeared from Hollywood. Her career was over. Meanwhile, Bogart and Bacall thrived until his passing from cancer in 1957. Their romance remains one of those rare Hollywood scandals that actually created a legend instead of destroying lives. Carole Lombard and Clark Gable. Before Gable's secret affair with Loretta Young, he found his greatest love with Carole Lombard, a romance that would end in devastating tragedy. They first connected at Lombard's White Mayfair Ball in 1936. Funny thing, they'd actually disliked each other when they made No Man of Her Own back in 1932. But something clicked that night. Lombard came from money, but kept this down-to-earth spirit. She was always helping people on the quiet, supporting struggling crew members, standing by her gay designer friend, William Haynes, when he was blacklisted, even helping out a young Lucille Ball. When people thanked her, she'd just wave them off with, "Oh shoot, forget about it." Gable, still dealing with emotional scars from his tough childhood, found peace in Lombard's generous nature and infectious laugh. He once said, "You can trust that little screwball with your life." And Lombard? She saw right through his tough guy act. He had my number so fast it was terrifying. He told me what I was, a screwy, neurotic, miserable fool, and he was right. To win him over, this sophisticated city girl learned to hunt, fish, and camp. She even wore fur-lined sleeping bags. They lived on a ranch, calling each other Ma and Pa, like some old married couple. Looked perfect from the outside. But underneath, major problems. Lombard couldn't handle Gable's constant cheating and his legendary cheapness. She even admitted to friends, "My God, you know how I love Pa, but I can't say he's a hell of a good lay." Her jealousy, especially over his thing with Lana Turner, got so bad she'd haunt film sets. Turner actually hid in her trailer once. The end came suddenly and horribly. January 12th, 1942. They had this massive fight about his cheating. Lombard stormed off for a war bond tour in Indiana, while Gable stayed behind to film with Turner. Her mom had bad feelings about flying, and Lombard didn't want to go either. But she won a coin toss that decided they'd fly instead of taking the train. January 16th, 1942, Flight 3 crashed into Mount Potosi near Las Vegas. Everyone perished, including Lombard, her mother, and 20 others. When Gable rushed to the crash site, MGM fixer Eddie Mannix found Lombard's body and brought back a single ruby from the jewelry clips Gable had given her. That was all that was left. Gable never got over it. He later said, "You know, I have everything in the world anyone could want but one thing. All I really need and want is Ma." The tragedy changed him, made him more generous, more thoughtful, but he spent the rest of his life looking for another Lombard among a string of witty blondes. Never found her. Lana Turner and Lex Barker. Lana Turner, Hollywood's glamour queen, known for her beauty and turbulent love life, found herself in one of the industry's darkest scandals with her fourth husband, actor Lex Barker. Turner's pattern of troubled relationships had deep roots. Born Julia Jean Turner in 1921, she endured unimaginable trauma when her gambler father Virgil met a violent end in 1930. She always believed this tragedy shaped her desperate need for love. Her mother Mildred's money troubles forced her to leave young Lana with an abusive foster family. Though Mildred rescued her when she found out, the damage was done. Barker, famous for playing Tarzan, seemed like a good match at first, but their marriage quickly turned into a nightmare. In 1957, Turner's daughter Cheryl Crane made horrifying allegations against Barker, claiming he'd been abusing her since she was just 10 years old. At first, Turner couldn't believe it. But after confronting both Barker and hearing her daughter's disturbing account, she threw him out immediately and filed for divorce. Barker denied everything. But the scandal destroyed his reputation and basically ended his Hollywood career. The whole thing devastated both Turner and her daughter. Turner was racked with guilt, and once again, her personal life was splashed across the tabloids. Meanwhile, Cheryl's innocence had been stolen, casting a shadow over her entire life. Just a year later, more tragedy struck when 14-year-old Cheryl defended her mother against Turner's abusive boyfriend, Johnny Stompanato. This scandal cemented Turner's reputation as a star constantly surrounded by drama. The Barker scandal exposed the ugly reality hiding behind Hollywood's glittering surface, a painful truth that would haunt Turner forever. Jean Harlo and Paul Byrne. Jean Harlo, Hollywood's original platinum blonde bombshell, got caught up in one of the 1930s most mysterious scandals. Her rise from nothing had been meteoric. Discovered while tagging along to a friend's audition, she transformed into Hollywood's most expensive star. Every week, she'd bleach her hair with peroxide and ammonia to get that signature platinum look. It wrecked her hair and her health, but it made her a star. Then came the morning housekeepers found her husband, MGM executive Paul Byrne, deceased in their Beverly Hills bathroom. Here's where it gets weird. They called MGM Studios first, then told Harlo, and only called the cops 2 hours later. Byrne had been Harlo's mentor, the guy who saw her comedy potential when everyone else just saw a pretty face. She's funny, she's very clever, she's witty, he'd tell people, building her career around laughs instead of just looks. But their marriage troubled from day one. Word was Byrne couldn't consummate the marriage, and he had this secret ghost wife, Dorothy Millette, he was still supporting financially. The night before his passing, Byrne and Harlo had a huge blow-up. She'd run to her mother's house, her go-to move whenever things got rough. Byrne ended his life and left a note apologizing for the frightful wrong I have done you. Less than 2 weeks later, Dorothy Millette's body was found in the Sacramento River after she jumped from a riverboat, devastated by the news. Here's the shocking part. Harlo came out of this scandal not ruined, but with public sympathy. First time, a Hollywood star, survived a major scandal with her career intact. People saw her as the victim, not the villain, but the trauma and stress, combined with years of harsh beauty treatments and non-stop work, destroyed her health. Harlo passed away tragically young at just 26 in 1937 from kidney failure. Years of chemical exposure, stress, and the brutal demands of stardom finally caught up with her. Hollywood was stunned. It proved that even the most glamorous stars paid a deadly price for fame. Ava Gardner and Frank Sinatra. In the early 1950s, Frank Sinatra had America wrapped around his little finger. That smooth voice, that boyish charm, he was everybody's heartthrob. But behind the crooning was a man in turmoil, and when he laid eyes on Ava Gardner, Hollywood's most dangerous beauty, his world exploded. Gardner came from nothing, and I mean nothing. Born in Grabtown, North Carolina, yes, that's a real place. She grew up on a tobacco farm, without electricity or running water. When the Depression hit, they lost everything and had to start over. That kind of poverty, it stays with you. Their relationship was like watching two tornadoes collide. Both had volcanic tempers, both were insanely jealous, and both could give as good as they got. They'd have these legendary fights, throwing things, screaming matches that'd wake the whole neighborhood. Then they'd make up just as passionately. It was exhausting just watching them. Sinatra was coming off a divorce from Nancy Barbado, his childhood sweetheart and mother of his 3 kids. The guilt ate at him, especially since he'd left them for Ava. Meanwhile, Gardner had already been through 2 marriages, to Mickey Rooney and bandleader Artie Shaw. She knew the Hollywood game, but with Frank, this was different. This was obsession. They married in 1951, but it was doomed from the start. Both were too proud, too stubborn, too damaged by their pasts. Sinatra's career was tanking. His voice was shot, his records weren't selling, and he was yesterday's news. Gardner was at her peak, getting all the best roles while Frank couldn't buy a job. That power imbalance? It poisoned everything. The jealousy was off the charts. Gardner would flirt with her co-stars just to make Frank crazy. Sinatra would accuse her of affairs. Sometimes he was right, sometimes he was paranoid. They'd split up, get back together, split up again. The press had a field day. Every fight, every reconciliation made headlines. What saved Sinatra was From Here to Eternity. Gardner actually helped him get that part, calling in favors. His Oscar win should have been their triumph, but by then they were too far gone. They divorced in 1957, but never really let go. Even decades later, Gardner would say Frank was the love of her life, and Sinatra, he never got over her. Every woman after was just a shadow of Ava. Rita Hayworth and Orson Welles. Before she became Princess Ali Khan's wife, Rita Hayworth got tangled up with Hollywood's most brilliant egomaniac, Orson Welles. Now, Welles was a genius, no question. But being married to a genius? That's its own special kind of hell. He was obsessed with his art. And Rita? She was just another prop in his grand production. They met in 1943, and Welles was immediately fascinated. Not just by her beauty, everyone was fascinated by that, but by what he could do with her. See, that was Welles's thing. He didn't see people. He saw potential projects. Rita wasn't his wife. She was his muse, his creation, his Galatea. Their marriage was Welles treating Rita like she was one of his films, something to direct, to mold, to perfect. He'd drag her into his projects, use their relationship as inspiration, but when it came to actual emotional support, when it came to being a real husband, forget it. The man was too in love with his own genius to love anyone else properly. The finances were a disaster. Welles spent money like water, other people's money, usually. He'd blow through Rita's earnings on his artistic visions while she worried about paying the bills. He was controlling, manipulative, and completely unable to separate his art from his life. Every argument became a scene. Every reconciliation became a performance. They had a daughter, Rebecca, but even fatherhood couldn't ground Welles. He was still chasing his artistic dreams, still treating real life like it was just raw material for his next masterpiece. Rita needed stability, needed someone who saw her as more than just beautiful raw material. She needed a partner, not a director. The marriage lasted 3 years. By 1947, Rita had had enough. She filed for divorce and went looking for someone who could give her what Welles never could: genuine love and stability. She thought she found it with Prince Ali Khan, but that's another story of disappointment. Welles? He just moved on to his next project, his next muse. For him, losing Rita was like losing a great leading lady. Unfortunate, but there were always more auditions. Joan Crawford and Clark Gable. Joan Crawford and Clark Gable's affair was Hollywood's longest-running open secret. For nearly 2 decades, these two kept circling back to each other like moths to a flame. 9 films together, countless stolen moments, and a connection neither could shake, no matter how hard they tried. Crawford's ability to love, really love, had been shattered early. Her childhood was a horror show of abuse and abandonment that her daughter Christina would later expose in Mommy Dearest. But with Gable, something was different. Maybe because he was just as damaged, just as hungry for real connection beneath all that movie star gloss. They first got together in the early 1930s when both were climbing the Hollywood ladder. The chemistry was instant and undeniable. On screen, they sizzled. Off screen, they burned even hotter. But timing was never on their side. When she was free, he was married. When he was available, she was tangled up with someone else. It was like some cosmic joke. What made it worse was that they genuinely loved each other. This wasn't just lust, or convenience, or career advancement, though Hollywood had plenty of that. Crawford and Gable had this deep understanding, this recognition of kindred spirits. They got each other's darkness, each other's drive, each other's damage. They'd break it off, swearing this time was the last time. Then they'd be cast in another film together, and one look was all it took. Back in each other's arms, back in each other's beds, back in that cycle of passion and guilt and impossible longing. The crew members knew, the studio knew, their spouses knew. Everyone pretended not to see. Crawford once said that Gable was the one man who could make her feel like a real woman, not just a movie star. And Gable? He found in Crawford someone who matched his appetite for life, who understood the price of stardom, who didn't judge his demons because she had plenty of her own. Their affair influenced everything: the roles they took, the the people they married, the choices they made. Even when they weren't together, they were together in spirit, comparing every lover to that impossible standard they'd set with each other. It was beautiful and tragic, and so very Hollywood. Two stars who could have anything except the one thing they truly wanted, each other, free and clear, without complications. These affairs? They're more than just juicy gossip from Hollywood's past. They're human stories about real people struggling with trauma, mental illness, addiction, and the crushing weight of maintaining perfect images while dealing with very human problems. Look at the patterns. Elizabeth Taylor's childhood upheaval, Katharine Hepburn's brother's passing, Lana Turner's father's tragic end, Ava Gardner's grinding poverty. These experiences created wounds that made healthy relationships nearly impossible. They were all looking for love, sure, but they were also looking for healing in all the wrong places. The studio system made everything worse. They controlled every aspect of stars' lives, from who they dated to what they said in public. Add in society's moral expectations and the media's relentless scrutiny, and you've got a recipe for disaster. Many of these affairs were desperate attempts to find something real in lives that were basically one long performance. Understanding these struggles doesn't excuse the hurt people caused, but it does help us see the whole picture. How the Hollywood machine built up these gods and goddesses, then fed on their very human failures. Their stories are cautionary tales about fame's price tag and why mental health support matters. These golden age stars didn't have therapists on speed dial or Instagram to control their narratives. They had to smile for the cameras while their worlds fell apart. Today's celebrities face different challenges, but the pressure, the scrutiny, the impossible standards, those haven't changed much. So next time you see a scandal splashed across your phone screen, remember these stories. Remember that behind every headline is a human being, probably carrying wounds you can't see, trying to find love and meaning in a world that treats them like entertainment. That's the real legacy of Hollywood's golden age of scandal. Not just the gossip, but the very human pain behind it. So that's the real story behind Hollywood's most shocking affairs. Pretty wild, right? If you enjoyed diving into these old Hollywood secrets with me, hit that subscribe button so we can keep exploring more incredible stories from the golden age together. I've got so many more tales to share. And trust me, they only get juicier from here.
I came to say goodbye to Buck. He never would have forgiven me if I'd have forgotten that. Would you, Buck?
You could have skipped that. You're only making it tougher on everybody.
Oh, put your arms around me.
Careful of that first stretch of rapids. After that, it's clear sailing all the way. Goodbye, Thornton. And God bless you. Goodbye, Blake.
Bye, Jim.
Goodbye, Claire. Hard to say no to that call, isn't it, Buck? It's all right, boy. Go ahead.